how long you.
Recording in progress.
Well, we sure as heck aren't over the limit of people in the room.
But yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cameron, I believe the question was, can you clarify what the increase from 500 to 1,000 in the line 504,480 professional was for?
That's the line. So if Weldon occasionally on projects like, well, I'll just use the bridge as an example. That was under a grant, but we do certain projects where he'll have a independent contractor come in and provide labor only for that, whatever. That's what that line is.
This was a question from you.
I understand that. Can we have some clarification on the public works trucks? Because that's a huge increase.
Yep. So our budget this year for maintenance and repair was $36,000. I think I've discussed it in select board meetings. One of our trucks is in need of repair. The body is creating a safety hazard. And if it's not replaced, that truck will be deadlined and it won't be used until we can replace it. So we've got 3 quotes. Out of the 3 quotes, the first one to replace that dump body, which is also a spreader body, because that's what sands the roads, was $55,160. The second one was $58,125. And the third one was $45,990. The public works foreman and I talked, and we utilized the lowest of the 3 and put it into that line because that is a maintenance and repair line, repair issue for. You're good. For public works trucks.
Thank you. Um, I did some math. I don't know if it's correct, but as of December, out of that 36 that we appropriated for the year we still in, there's 20 still left. And I didn't know if it was possible to ask Weldon or maybe Cameron, who 2 together could kind of project what would be, if that 20 is still left in June. Let's say there's $15,788.38 left. Do you want that to drop undesignated fund balance, or would the board be open to perhaps say, instead of that dropping, let's put it towards this RFP? And then plus there's another out of the 5,000 miscellaneous that hasn't been spent, so you're almost up to like half the cost in front. If like, are you considering those things?
Because we don't know, like, on the last day of this budget cycle, we could need that money. So
There you go.
my understanding is that we can't really
If you look up there.
predict. We will hope that all of that will be left, but we can't predict that it will be. So the idea being that that would then lapse to fund balance, and then we would be able to take that amount and use it to offset this year's taxes. The amount that we, am I correct? Yes.
There's $1,357 left in that line as of right now. No, it's a public meeting.
Okay.
But there's only $1,300 left in that line. Most of our repairs don't get done until the spring, right? Because we're running trucks all winter long, unless it's an emergency. So we have about $1,300 left in that line of that 36,000. So my guess is probably by the end of the fiscal year, that line will actually be overdrawn. But at the end of the day, the overall budget for that department will not be.
Money has been spent since the last report that you have.
When I heard the door, I was like getting ready to jump on somebody because it makes me nervous.
Oh,
Yeah, that's not so.
I thought you were headed to Bangor.
Yes.
So yeah, to answer your question, I don't know what month you were looking at that report, but
He said,
as a,
knowing there was 6 months left, but I just
Yeah.
thought. Yeah, okay. Cause that's a lot of money.
it pulls it back up.
Any other board recommendations under public works?
Under Public Works winter, I was wondering about sand and gravel and, from 20,000 to, oh wait, it has a note here. Yeah, I was just curious about the 20,000 to $33,600 on 503-313 sand and gravel.
Yeah, last year's budget was based off of the price that we had on our last contract, and then we received bids, and the select board elected the lowest bid, which for the amount, the 3,200 yards comes out to $33,600.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Did we skip some? Work so much?
We did not have any questions or recommendations, and I didn't rate it hands, so I just kept going.
Okay, well,
Would you like me to go back?
yes, please, it's perfect, it's all her fault.
Mark, raise her hand if she, I feel she's perfect.
She threw you under the bus.
Apparently, like distracted her.
Under the bus, Mark. Yes, dude.
Okay,
Martha's not distracting you.
so. I understand there's Jim Ward Road, the guardrails need to be replaced. I don't know if that's new or if that was part of some project and it never got done. Then there's the Drew Brook Road and the guardrails need to be reinstalled. And the quote is for 16,000. And I'm wondering if that's just one estimate. Other thing I'm wondering is why there's still $928 left in the general ledger under Drew Brook. Will that be put into local revenues towards this? And then my third question I made is replacing and reinstalling guardrails after projects like the Drew Brook. Was that not in the contract? In the RFP or the contract?
Yes, please, somebody wants to. Thank you.
So as everybody's aware, when that was engineered, it was engineered with guardrails. And then when the project came to, when we finished it, it was just before, well, it was end of summer. We were $38,000 over budget. And again, the grant was only for 110,000. So the town share originally, we estimated it was going to cost us about 10 to 15. It ended up costing us 35 to 38. And then winter hit and we didn't get a chance to install the guardrails. So that's obviously on our list of to-dos. And with the increased costs of the project above and beyond what we anticipated.
So we need to do this, and this is what it's going to cost to get it done.
And it is an estimate. I have it sitting right in front of me. It's $10,000. And it's not reinstalling, it's installing because we never put them in.
Well, what the Jim White says to be replaced, the Drew Brook says to be installed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The Jim Warren. What's the GO1 number?
3,000-0.
So negative $928. But then if you go down to, well, you don't see the general ledger too. That's a bookkeeping error because there's a second general ledger that was created, which is a different fund account. And that one is, where is it? Drew Brook. That one's actually $4,600 over. So that negates the negative. So again, general ledgers, are you looking at the actual report that's printed out of Trio?
No, I was looking at the quarterly report.
Which includes the report. So if you see a negative at the end, that's a positive. if I showed you GO2, and again, these were created when,
Yeah, well, that's why I thought there was still $928 left, even though it had a negative in front of it. I understood that part, but I don't see the second part that you're looking
Right.
at. Is that what you're saying?
right. And
So it's not there.
correct. There needs to be a general journal taking what? You take that 900, what, 900 and some odd dollars away from this 4,600, and that
You're
30 something $100 needs to be transferred. It needs to go back over to all roads. It's just, it needs a correction that needs to happen in the books. We got all our money back from the state. So that general ledger is wiped out.
get tacked onto the 16. Why does it go to all?
No. But again, when I came in, these accounts were created in multiple funds. And when I talked to Trio, creating those multiple funds creates a bookkeeping nightmare because of the system, you have to do 4 entries in order to make one transfer. So I went and created the one Drew Brook account that you see in the main general ledger account. And then I just didn't transfer this money over, which means that I have to take that 3,600 bucks. I have to take it out of all roads and transfer it over there to make it a net zero, because that's where it should have came out of. And that's where it should have been paid out of, not the general ledger.
I guess that's a little confusing because I thought that money was raised and appropriated specifically for Drew books.
No, your GL is the money we get back from the state. So when they pay us, it went into that GL. And then as I was paying invoices, so as I'm paying invoices, it's all reimbursement. So as I pay an invoice for the concrete, right, I pay for it out of that GL, and it goes into a negative figure, which shows up on the report as a positive. I know, confusing. And then when the check comes in from the state, when I get reimbursed, it goes back into that account, which wipes out whatever I just paid. However, like I said, you've identified just a simple accounting error, and I just have to do a GL and take it out of all roads and fix that.
So the sidewalks. Because I thought that went from 900 to 1,200. Is that the cost just to run the machine? Or is that wages for the person to run the machine that we now?
What line are we in? We're on one of those now.
Yeah, maintenance and repairs.
That's maintenance and repairs 506, 637 sidewalks.
No, still in summer.
Yeah.
She's still in summer.
That's to rent a sweeper to sweep the sidewalks. The maintenance for the sidewalk machine is in winter roads.
So it's just the rental for the sweeper has gone up.
No, before it was all part of the rental that we got from, what was the name of the company we used to rent the sidewalk machine from? Anyways, it was included in the overall cost that we had paid. Summer sidewalk, so it was 900. Now we have that sidewalk, we have our sidewalk machine. They won't rent us the sidewalk machine anymore. So if we elect to sweep, we have to pay for the rental for the sweeper because we don't have the sweeper attachment.
So I'm still in that section. Did no one else have anything else? The summer roads, all roads. So maybe that's another place because again, I was using the quarterly report and it said as of December, we had already spent 49,985, which is 14,000, almost 15,000 over that 35. So is there an accounting error? Please explain it. Why is this due to the December storm? I mean, I brought the quarterly report.
And I understand it because I wrote them that we're going with numbers that are old. So if you recall, we voted to take carryover to increase the all roads budget because we went over budget under Brook. We've also spent money on Fonts Road. So there was an additional $40,000 last year on top of the $35,000. So the number that you're looking at, I can't go and backfeed a number into that budget line. So you're seeing the 35, you're gonna have to add 45 to it, or 40. And then, so you've got 40 to 75. And so we're not over. We're within it. And actually that number is really updated because a lot of those the storm figures aren't in there. So 125, 387. It'd be really nice if I could see the rest of this column. What's the account number in front of you? I don't have them all memorized.
I mean,
Oh, 506, 645.
the reason I thought it was over drafted, if you will, is because this accounting doesn't show the 40. And it's really 75, if I heard you correctly.
Correct, because the town voted to approve that $40,000 carryover. So the current balance as of Friday, when I clocked out, was 58,365.81 has been spent out of all roads. So we've got 16,644 left.
Just about the opposite overdraft. But how was I?
So in all that front said, like my question is, I think our goal tonight was to get through the budget and the revenues. And are there, many of these questions are very valid, but it's like they're clarifying questions. So I'm wondering if we could put those off, questions like that, which the town manager can answer. Is there some way to give you the opportunity to meet with him to get those questions answered? And then you could use that knowledge to make your input for changes, because at this rate, we're going to be here till midnight and we can't do that. But you should very much have the opportunity to have all of this clarified for you. Would that be acceptable to you for clarifying questions to wait?
Well, yes, that's acceptable.
Like accounting questions?
But see, the problem is when it comes out to the public, right?
Mhm.
And if I can't understand it, and with my little bit of limited experience, it's because I don't understand it. It's not an accounting issue. It's a visible, this is what I'm reading and it looks like a mistake. And please explain it. You know, so I agree. I'm good.
Okay, yeah, I want anybody to have the opportunity to have things explained to them. But as we try as a select board to make our recommendations. Yeah,
He's first.
The only thing I was gonna say is we're gonna have, for you and for Viv too, we're gonna have two public hearings before this is finalized. And if these questions come up there, I mean, that would be the perfect opportunity for us to go over those, but because they're not gonna finalize their decision until after those public hearings. So if there is an error or there'll be an opportunity to,
yes.
but I would also welcome you to give me those questions so that I can answer them while you're here in the office, and I could be prepared for if there is one.
Martha, did you have a question or a comment?
I do understand your frustration. I've sat in that seat.
It's not frustration.
No, it is. It's stunning.
No, I want to make sure that we are able to complete the task that we have been.
That is true. That is true. And I hear you and I understand that, and you do what you need to do. And I understand there's going to be public hearings. But if the questions are not answered, your public hearing will go very, very. And when it's on the warrant, and then people have questions about the numbers on the warrant, there was a time that I didn't get my answers as a select person sitting in the seat that you're sitting in. And I was given 2 minutes to ask 42 questions. 42 questions. I don't want that to ever happen again in this town. Because if I have 42 questions the next time like that, you'll have to get a share. I I won't stand for it again. So it is important and it is hard and I think Vivian understands what you're saying too, about the minutia.
Well, where I'm coming from is if she has questions about the accuracy of these numbers or understanding the accuracy, whether or not the mistakes have been made.
And it says 35, and there's a note there that says fuel has been moved to 3 different departments and the number hasn't changed. How do I know that that's is what it is?
But and it's fair to ask, is that correct? And if it's not correct, but
That's all I've been asking, is it correct?
So with that said, there are historical notes in here, and this is just the way Trio's set up. So I will, moving forward in subsequent years, and if I can play with this, if I find an older note, I will put a year next to it so everybody can understand what year it's from.
we're learning as we know better, we will do better. So, Viv, do you have any other questions about?
No.
Honestly, not honestly, or no, you don't have questions.
What's going with you there? The other miscellaneous went up by 1,000 in winter. We're still in winter, or that's where I was left off. Yeah, it's halfway down the winter.
So what number?
503, 355, it says other miscellaneous. If that's just another contingency line, I want to know why that line went up 8,000, but all the other departments stayed the same.
So I guess perhaps you.
If you want me to answer it, I'll answer it. So that's the line I used to purchase the big gigantic tarp that goes over our sand pile, which is this year it went up from $3,500 to 47, and I anticipate it'll be 5 or 6 by next year.
So to be concise, that's the increase in cost of the truck.
Yes.
That was slightly. So I think that may also help move the process along, is just being able to share what the cost is. Further questions on public works?
It's the maintenance cost for the sidewalk.
What number?
506, 637 sidewalks.
Okay.
And it's down to the 2,500, which is a good thing, but like.
So why?
Because last year that was the line that we used to pay for the rental of the sidewalk machine, and now we own the sidewalk machine, then we have to budget for maintaining the sidewalk machine. So that's $2,500. It's an older machine, so any anticipated
maintenance for the sidewalk machine that we have. Thank you.
Correct.
Another one?
No, unless you go to cemetery.
Well, not there yet. Well, we're still in public works, so cemeteries.
Oh, I guess so. So under miscellaneous, right there, the 506, 675 miscellaneous.
What was the increase from 2,000 to 6,500? But I didn't know wages.
No, I think she's talking about miscellaneous 675. That's the first one.
Okay. Sorry, from 13.2 to 5,000.
Oh, I don't understand that. What?
Last year that line was used for contracted mowing. This year it's only for exactly what that note says.
So that's contracted mowing, not this way.
No, 13,000. There wasn't an account listed as when the budget was written last year. It was written, the contracted mowing was all under miscellaneous for each one of the departments. As we've described, Public Works has taken back the mowing, and this line, the note says exactly what that $5,000 is for.
Right, following that is that the zero turn, we kind of hit on that earlier. But it looks like a larger share of the zero turn is being paid by the cemetery.
Because cemeteries uses the zero turn more than any other. It's divided out proportionally. So the cemetery budget will carry more of the weight of the zero turn than recreation because it is used more.
So if you went by square footage and you have two rec fields and the one down back, and then you do the square footage of the cemeteries. I didn't know, is it hourly or is it land mass?
I think
The
that what
hour-
happened is that they took all of the information and balanced it out the best they could.
The hours on that machine are going to be spent more at the cemetery than at the rec field. And here.
Straight lines are easy to move in.
Any other questions in public works? All right, moving on. Waste management. Does the board have any questions or recommendations they would like to make? Waste management
Section.
community members with questions or recommendations? We have on the following page. School budget. We can do good, which is what has been given to you as the best information we have at this time.
No, the number you're looking at was my 5% projection, and then I found out from the school board member that that's looking more like 13% in its current state. So if it stands at the most recent information, that's going to be closer to $1,925,000. But
that
they're
is
still
nothing
working on
that this body has any control over whatsoever
correct.
in this setting. But certainly people with questions or concerns should address those to the school board or the administration there. Yes.
I did blow it. I did have a question in the transfer station solid waste is one is if you get an MWAX division. And then the other thing is, and this is always confusing to everybody, so we'll clarify it now, is in the budget, is it the 65%? Is that just our town share or is that the whole share? If it's just the town share, that's one thing, but the MWAC comes in and then.
So could you give the line number that you're
No, it's a generalized question.
uh
Since I have been employed by the town of Buckfield, I have not seen a main waste to energy dividend check. That answers that question. The budget itself has to raise and account for the full cost of the transfer station. The Sumner's 35% is factored into revenues, which is deducted from the overall budget to determine how much we need to tax and appropriate. So this is the full operating cost of the transfer station as proposed. And when the town accepts revenues, they'll accept the 35% that Sumner pays, which will reduce the amount that we tax out to our citizens.
We have a savings account, a sharing account. Are we gonna use any of those local revenues charged from our 65% of that share to offset this budget?
Those funds have been used to offset the overage last year. I anticipate there will be an over budget this year because of waste costs. And what those funds are used for is really up to the solid waste committee, not this board, other than overages of the budget.
Okay.
so following the school, there's the county tax. If you address that, please.
I just projected 5%. I haven't heard anything from county or I don't know what they're anticipating.
So at the time this was written, that was the most accurate figure that you could put out there.
Yeah, I just backed
It is what it is.
I just backed it a 5% increase just so that there's something in the computer.
Okay, emergency funds. Is there a board member who has a recommendation? I just. Hey, please. So here's my thought. So there's this amount of $10,000 for an emergency contingency fund. We experienced this year an emergency. We declared a public, what was the actual declaration? Please clarify for me.
Presidential declaration. National,
So presidential declaration of disaster, the town had to spend a great deal of money. The good news in there is good news of the disaster, is that through the work of the emergency management team, reports were filed, requests made, and we stand a very good chance of getting a great deal of those funds back through FEMA money. We hope, but that's where I want to make sure I'm using the correct terms. So that's fantastic. Looking ahead, I think that it's important for us to set aside emergency money. So when there are situations like that, that we can spend money from the emergency fund, not from the budget that we set, because the amount of money that it costs us in roads and public works expenditures in some ways skews what our budget looks like. As I am learning about how all this works, what I think would be a good idea is to create or do what we need to do to have a reserve account. So it'd be an emergency reserve account. I would propose that we take $20,000 from the fund balance to create this reserve account, that is used to cover emergencies. I don't think it would be a bad idea for this body to define or put some parameters around the use of an emergency fund. But then we would also have a situation, help me learn how to set this up, but that any monies that we recoup through FEMA would then go back into that fund to replenish what we spent. Hopefully we would not have to spend the emergency fund. So that means next year we would still have $20,000 in this reserve account. That would be, and so then we would no longer have this line item of emergency, that it would be a reserve account. So if we don't spend any money, it will still be there for next year, and we will have to ask for more. And this would be very clear when we do spend money on an emergency. It has to do with roads or maintenance or emergency. We can keep that separate from our budget. That's my thought. What do you think? Pros, cons?
Is that something we can do outside of just having the emergency contingency fund, or something you want? I'm not sure that.
What's the process in establishing a reserve account?
You gotta put it on a warrant article to establish that reserve and what the purpose is, and then to expend out of it. Year after year, you would have to have a warrant article that asks the voters to use up to the balance of that fund for the purposes of emergencies as you define. And it would have to pass. If it didn't, according to MMA, it's absolutely true. So
as we understand it now, we would have to.
In order to establish the account, you have to get the voters' approval. And then if you're putting money, you need their approval to put money in there from wherever you're getting it. And that last conversation I had with the attorney at MMA was, in order to use money from a reserve account, it would have to be, you'd have to go to the voters and ask for it year after year. But for something like this, what you're saying, because you don't really know what it's gonna be. You would have to ask every year to use up to that balance for,
Emergency purposes.
as, like I said, as defined,
Mhm.
but you'd have to ask it regularly.
Okay.
And it was highly recommended not to do it on a one and done, because you can't tie down you can't tie down a legislative body. I forgot how they worded that.
So what we would do is have a warrant article to establish this reserve fund. Which my recommendation is not to raise this from through taxation, but to take this money from the fund balance. And then any money that we would receive back from FEMA, or any other source. I don't know if there's another source where we may get funding back after an emergency. So then we would ask each year voting, we would just have a warrant article saying, put this money in there and allow us please to spend this money if there were to be another emergency. Am I correct in that?
I'd be interested to see
But as your understanding is.
my understanding as of right now, but I don't know if she has some insight that might.
Yes.
I'm sorry I said that. I'm gone. So that's it, just comes out. I believe by state law that the board of selectmen have an opportunity to spend out of the reserves at any time they want to. They would then maybe have to go back at the end of the year and say, please accept this money. And that's what I meant. Yes, I agree. You have to have it on a warrant article to set up a reserve account. I like the whole idea, to be honest with you, but without a reserve fund policy in place, I don't like the idea. I think until certain steps are taken, I would say if you want it to be 20 because you think you need 20 because things are happening more frequently, then just put another 10 in there for this year and then throughout next year work on a policy first, then write up the warrant, define emergency, define where the revenue comes in and do it that way. But earlier you were talking about how much time this is taking. I can't imagine that happening between now and then, but I would support something like that.
Am I correct that this past emergency cost us more than $10,000 as a town? The storm, the flooding.
I would say yes.
Okay.
In the last year, Fons Road has washed out twice. That alone is well over 10.
So that's what led me to saying this money is not adequate to cover. I would still make this recommendation. I would be comfortable drafting. I don't know what the language we want to use, but policy guidelines. Present to this board. I think that's important. That people understand that our understanding of emergency is what other people think an emergency is. But that should be in place. But that's why not.
Yeah, I agree on both points. I think that $10,000 is not adequate for these inclement weather events that we have been having lately. But agreeing with this point, we need some sort of reserve fund policy in place.
And my understanding is we do not have any policies right now for the emergency contingency fund. So if we did, I would say let's continue those. Let's put something together.
I agree.
One way or another. Okay, so perhaps before we go on to revenue, we should take a vote or some votes or entertain some motions on our recommendations for the budget, if people are comfortable with that. And so, Cameron, I know you've taken notes here, where's, so this was for, we had just, I'm hesitant to put all of these together in motion.
I think, if you don't mind,
So I would like to hear what other board members would like me to do. I'm thinking perhaps to each section, if there were any recommendations within a section, put those together in motions, but I'm hesitant to make one. Like, if you could comment on that.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
that's fine. I was just thinking to myself with all the changes that you've made, it would, you have a meeting on Tuesday. Nothing is gonna really get accomplished between tomorrow and Tuesday as far as what I'm trying to say is if you just make it clear on what you want plugged into these lines, it's easier for me to edit this sheet and have one that, because I mean, we went over a lot of things. Do you all know exactly what you're,
I think I've got them.
do you? Okay. I'm gonna write it down as you
We are
go.
not going to go tonight because we wanted to collect more information, but if as we go through this process, it causes your brain to bleed. Please give me that look and we will take a vote. Is that fair?
Yep. I'm gonna do this in real time so that I'm just, it's in the computer because.
Yes. Over to you.
Yep.
We can maybe teamwork these motions a little bit. If you have a look, if I'm not correct, please. Heather.
I will try.
Yeah, there was one. Under general government administrative. I would like to move that we recommend adding if it was $4,000, correct? 41, increasing that to $41,000. Is that correct, Cameron?
Yeah, you all already voted on that section.
Oh, we did.
Yeah, you're starting with fire or public safety.
Thank you. You're further ahead than I probably will too. I don't believe that we discussed the recommendations under public safety fire.
No.
Is that correct? Okay.
Under rescue, I think we only decided to explore what fellow fire departments are doing regarding the striker service contract.
But so we did discuss,
Transfers.
adding an additional
Gotcha.
$10,000 to salary wages line and adjusting the FICA Medicare as needed to allow for transfers to take place, which would then generate revenue for the town. Was there anything else other than the striker that we talked about? Okay. All right, so I'll make a motion that we recommend increasing the wages line by 10,000 and making the appropriate adjustments to it, like Medicare and any other employee benefits necessary, given that $10,000 to allow for transfers to happen.
That makes your wage line.
Discussion.
That makes your wage line 303.44.
293,444, correct?
No, so 293.444 was the original calculation plus what the budget committee had recommended to you.
Okay. And then you would add 10, so 303,444. Okay.
Which
So
then,
that would include the recommendation from the budget committee.
correct. The FICA line becomes 18,815. Medicare becomes 4,400. Can you see my screen? Okay, yeah. Yes.
And to be clear, these increases in FICA and Medicare are also partially due in part to increases due to the adjustment from your initial to your new number and
So the original number that I had proposed was incorrect. The FICA line for the 289,700 before you made any changes was 18,000. With the changes that you have all discussed, that changes that 18,000 to, what did I say, 18,815.
so this is adding 815 up, because when I look at this, it has the FICA at 16,600.
Yeah, you can see from the 267, I didn't readjust those two.
Yes. We're not, this does not generate a $2,000 increase, that's due to other factors. Let's cover this now. Is there any other discussion?
Math's good. It's those three lines from 4,400, 18,815, 303,444. I know you can't see it because there's no labels on it, but
Okay, if there's no discussion, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Azalea, aye.
Bob, I,
Aye.
Peter, I.
Sandra, aye. The motion passes. We decided to wait on gathering a little bit more information. Okay. Service plan versus no service plan for the striker. And then we'll make that recommendation on Tuesday. Is that correct? Okay. The next thing I see that we discussed is an increase in the emergency vet treatment. Is there anything before that?
Don't have anything.
So I'll make a motion that we increase the amount for emergency vet treatment, which would be 504-505 from $500 to $1,600.
I second that motion.
Any discussion? Okay, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Azalea, aye.
Bob, I.
Claire?
Peter, I.
Sandra, aye. The motion passes.
5,050, right? Total.
Right,
Yep.
which would be total to 5,050.
Two second that.
Mhm.
Is the line above it being like separate only?
We'll
change that.
That one's mileage. This one's all, yeah, it's broke down in the note, but it's all one total.
Thank you for catching details. We had asked Karen to reach out to the librarian to see if The librarian has objection to a cost of living wage increase. So when we have that information, we can address that on Tuesday. I don't have any other notes until we get to emergency funding.
I don't even.
Items. So I'd like to make a motion that we present the community with a warrant article to the warrant to establish an emergency reserve account. We have $20,000 taken from the fund balance. I don't know if I included it, and with that, we would remove this emergency line 140-100 from the budget. All right, there's no second, it's what is the word
And a while.
okay.
So we're gonna get the emergency,
In order to discuss it, we have to have a second,
oh, I'm sorry,
but
I'll second just to discuss.
okay, so we have a second, so let's discuss.
So we want to get rid of the emergency contingency there and just go with the $20,000 reserve account, that's what we, yeah.
Right, to set aside $20,000 to use in an emergency situation, and with that, I think that we need to define or set parameters around what constitutes an emergency.
Right, because right now we use that 10,000 for the game.
And I think that we could continue, it doesn't, I'm not suggesting that this money only be used for, what was the word that you used? How did you say that?
I wish I could
Climate.
remember. Inclement climate event.
Climate events.
Yeah.
That it could also be used for anything that we define, we agree is an emergency, which would be something that is above and beyond what we could be expected to budget for. I don't know how we would define that. Yes.
So I think the concern is we gotta have time to define that emergency.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we gotta be able to come together and define what we don't want.
Mm-hmm. That's what gives me pause, is I would like to have that outlined before we bring this to the voters. And I want to make sure we are going to have the time to do that.
No, I hear you.
Yeah.
If we don't go this way, I would suggest that we talk about increasing this emergency line from 10,000 to 20,000.
Mm-hmm.
So my thought behind this is that we should set aside that amount of money for emergencies.
Mm-hmm.
But rather than raise and appropriate this through taxation year after year, that we establish a reserve fund. And then what we could also do is, if there's an emergency such as the one we experienced, where we then received money from FEMA, we could then ask the voters to apply that money or put that money into the reserve. Right, so for us to better be able to track money that we spend and money that we get in to cover emergencies. Perhaps we need to spend money on an emergency and then we get some grant money in that would cover that. And anything else, get to go to fund into that was my thought process, you know, is to have more clear tracking. So that there's that two part. I don't, we have shown this year that $10,000 is not enough to cover the emergencies, but then also to give you the salaries that we can. You remaining some questions or thoughts? Yes, please.
As I said, for years this town has inappropriately set aside money into reserve accounts. There are specifically 3 accounts, technically. Now, we might call them different things here in this town. They have to fall under 3 categories for us to technically make a reserve account. The emergency one would be under the financial. So if the financial burden happens to us and it's something that we weren't appropriated for, then that's what the money is supposed to, so that'll work. You as the trustees must maintain the appropriate amount of money and that it's not to be spent on anything that it was not appropriated for. If you do, you can be charged for the plastic bond. So it's always been there, but the town has never, town people have never appropriated for. If you're going to open or try to do reserve accounts again, I echo Vivian for the umpteenth time that if we're going to do this, it needs to be done right, and you need to do a reserves account policy and procedure that has been verified through MMA or our lawyer, and let's get on reserve accounts again. It's a lot quicker. They never. But I do think that you need to, for this budget, put in the amount, a bigger amount. It's just 10,000 then 10,000 since I live in this town. And as we saw with the policy that we looked at for just even construction costs, that $5,000 maybe we got to like 15, we decided at the end, but that we thought was right. Same thing happens here. You're looking at $25,000, if not 30, is a reasonable amount of money that should be set aside in the town truck for truck. I mean, nothing costs us. That's my opinion.
I wholeheartedly agree. It makes me uncomfortable that we don't have a policy in place for the emergency fund that we have. If people like this idea, I'm thinking at this point it's a recommendation to the budget, and if you have some time, so we're going to do that legwork to kind of move the proposal for policy that looks like something, and we can get it in front of MMA, and they say yes, then we can do it. If MMA says, this takes work, then we don't try to work for this year. I mean, if people don't think that, the other piece is that by setting aside, and whether it's 20 or 30 or 35 or whatever, we should set aside for an emergency. But at this point, we don't, by doing it in reserve and taking that money from the fund balance, we are not raising and appropriating it through taxes. And that's why it's,
But can I have a question for clarification? Do you say you still want to take money from a fund balance and make a reserve account this year? Yes. Is that what I'm here?
If we can send a policy to MMA and not only say that's how it's good, then.
Okay, so you still, that's the idea, you write a policy, try to get MMA to agree with it.
To read it and say, yes, this looks good, and if MMA says, this takes a lot of work and we don't have time to do it, then we won't do it. But if we can do it, we still have some time before Yeah. That's just off, but again. The other option would be that we increase the budget by another 20,000 which I think we need to have more money set aside. Yeah, we don't do that. Right. Listing.
So this is really, I mean, I agree with what everybody's saying. This is really a long, wordy way of doing what essentially you're already doing without the reserve account. Because like this year currently, even though we went over budget in summer roads, and then we went and utilized carryover from the previous year to increase that line for this year. The $10,000 as it stands right now is going to lapse to fund balance, and then you're going to make a fund balance decision based off what the voters say. So you're essentially, if it lapses, and then you vote to appropriate it to offset taxes, you're going to be utilizing the same fund balance money to increase this line by whatever you decide it is. You get where I'm coming from? I'm just nervous about writing a policy before the 12th of April and having it ready for a warrant and everything. I'm really nervous about these timeframes right now. I'm stressed right out about them. I think it's a good idea. I just think that it should, I think for the sake of the time frame we're on, increasing this to what you feel is the correct number to be here for an emergency contingency for this next fiscal year would be important. And then we add this to the next meeting after this one to start discussing, or we start doing, or you start doing the research on that policy and drafting that policy so that this time next year we're ready for it and we're not trying to do it at the last minute. And I just don't want to see us.
No, however it looks to the voters, my concern is to increase the budget by another $20,000 with people not understand that's just what, because this is where I'm coming from. So if we did that and then potentially increase the money that we take from the fund balance to offset this year's budget, if we look at increasing that amount. So it comes out to be what's the result, like a net zero in what we need to raise and appropriate through taxation.
I mean, my opinion, the voters, whether they see a reserve account and taking $20,000 out of fund balance to create this reserve account, or see this account at $20,000 or $25,000 or whatever, they're going to see the same $20,000 and they're going to think the same thing, whether it says fund balance or raise and appropriate. Because, I mean, as it stands right now, based off the changes that you've made tonight, less revenue, not including any fund balance allocation, the municipal share that's going to be taxed and appropriated is $1,345 $1,345,799.75. So that's not factoring in what I had originally came and said 300,000. We need to do a better job at educating people on what they're actually being taxed and appropriated on, because the number they're seeing on the ballot, because we have to approve a budget, isn't the amount that they're actually seeing on their tax bill. And when you add all these up to $2,822,694, that's a long ways away from 1,345,000. And that's why I think the 2 public hearings is important. That's why I think putting this stuff up on Facebook is important, because people are watching, people are talking about it, people are communicating about it. And the more people that are talking about it are talking to their neighbors, and that's important. But I think in the grand scheme of this, I like this idea. I like the reserve account policies. We've got a lot on our plates in the next 4 weeks. And I know all of you have full-time jobs. And so do I. And let's do it the right way. That's just my opinion. I don't have a vote, so.
So can I just take back my motion.
It was second, it's not a motion anymore.
I will, what do they
Rescind.
call it?
Rescind.
Resend my second.
Okay, so now let's put that on the. Dead in the water. Does anyone want to make a recommendation on what we should set aside, given thinking about the emergencies that could very well occur, looking at what was spent this past year on emergencies, what we should set aside in case of emergencies next year?
I will make a motion that we make a change to the emergency line 510-100 and increase that to $20,000.
Okay, all in favor? Oh, discussion?
You have 20,000 enough, right?
How much did that storm cost us?
Around 17 to 20 maybe. I don't have it all.
So that was just the January or was it December? I can't remember the
That was
date.
On May.
Yes, the whole idea for the emergency fund is expended. That if you're gonna get the money back, is do we, that storm, did we actually pay out all of that money? Like paid out, like we're afraid we're not gonna get it back. That's really what the emergency money is for. So if we're looking at, there's that kind of emergency where there is gonna be a reimbursement, a partial reimbursement. You don't want that emergency fund to be ginormous, because it's money that just flows back in,
We don't, we hope that we will get it back, we don't.
Right.
Mhm.
So what I'm saying is that, again, you're gonna try to cover every single emergency that could possibly happen, then you might as well put 100,000. So if it's by putting it at 20 or by 30, try to think of a reasonable number, like how much did this cost? Say a storm that we had in, what was it, 2012 or something like that. And then how much more did it cost now when all those rainstorms came up? And that's, that 2.5% of 1.5% that gets you to that number. I mean, you're doubling it now. 10 to 20 is a double.
My worry is that the storms are gonna double next year. My worry is that the storms will double next year, like what if we have two of those situations, and we don't have our funds back from FEMA?
Should I respond?
Sure.
There's already been two storms in 2023, like I said, May and December. Just because we're applying for public assistance, I'll be very clear, does not mean we're gonna get it back. I understand that there was 9,000, I'm just throwing this number out there, whatever's in the budget currently that you're approving right now for those batting cases. We may or may not be reimbursed for FEMA for that, so on and so forth. I think picking a percentage. I also, being very new at this, understand there's this piece of me saying, wait a minute, because I believe if it's already budgeted for, then it does affect what your reimbursement is from FEMA. So I agree with what Martha just said, triggered that, because and it's new to me too, so I'm pretty sure, like, say we had $250,000 sitting in the summer roads account, we might not get reimbursed from FEMA because it's already budgeted for. We were going to do Font Road. You see what I'm saying? There's something in there in that policy. I mean, it
reimburses your non-budget.
It
reimburses a non-budget item.
Right.
Supposed to be not expecting.
Yeah.
Right, and then the other thing is, it's not just the storm, and well, I guess winter would be a good example if we had a blizzard and we had extra overtime hours and stuff. That's already covered under state law for overdrafts, and you would just go to the town and say, we ran out of sand, we had to buy more salt and sand. has nothing to do with FEMA, but it may produce a stronger storm that would make us use salt sand faster or quicker. I think 20 is a good number for now.
I agree with that.
I mean, yeah, what she's saying, those storms that we just had were in the winter months. Technically, that's considered your winter budget. Doesn't matter if it was snow, it doesn't matter if it was ice, doesn't matter if it was rain. It's in the winter season. The state of Maine allows you to over, that's like the only account that you're ever allowed to go through.
General assistance.
In general assistance, sorry, in general assistance, that you're allowed to go over, that you overdraft it. Nobody wants to, but it is what it is. And then you can go back. All the other accounts you can't. So if that's what what kind of emergencies are we thinking that we're gonna have other than winter storms?
So yeah, if that storm had led to major destruction of this building because of the wind and what have you, yeah.
And we have insurance for that. It sucks to hear that, but we have insurance for that. That's the whole idea of insurance policies and those kinds of things. We are supposed to be protecting the town the best that we possibly can, and our insurance policies are deductible. If anything, the emergency fund might help pay for deductible. I have no idea what your deductibles are here in the town for building by building, but it's just like our insurance for a car.
So summer storm, flooding in the summer, that would not have the same. You can't go over on summer roads. You can only do it in winter.
Yep.
Other discussion? Okay. The motion is to increase the line 510-100 emergency from 10,000 to 10,000. Call for a vote. All in favor?
Azalea, aye.
Bye.
Heather, aye.
You're right.
Sandra, aye. And the motion passes. Do you have to make a motion to start the process to the reserve fund for next year?
We'll just have to do
that
that
before.
before.
So looking at the revenue worksheet, this first page, 100-300. 100-315. Does anyone have any questions about these figures, what they represent?
Not always from Florida.
Yes.
Trying to bring back my memory of budgets. Appropriated revenue and non-appropriated. Is that separate? I didn't look through this, it's my fault. Do you know how much is each?
The numbers that are in this
Yep.
are what is going to go before the voters to appropriate to offset taxes.
Okay, but not necessarily to farm to doctor farm. This is just what it.
This is how it's in the system. So like everything from all the stuff that we process here is listed under general government. And then obviously, but everything that goes to meeting is going to be the total of all of this local revenue.
I'm only saying this to help the rest of you think about that. You're worried about the emergency fund and all of that. Appropriated revenue. We say yes to a big number. Some of that number is appropriated, meaning it's already been like it has to go to this like emergency funds or fire because it was a grant of that. Anything that is non-appropriated, if there's an emergency, that money doesn't have to drop to the fund balance. That can get switched over. If we're paying attention and we have a certain amount of revenue. So that's something to think about. That's why I was like, if we knew how much it was, that might give you some ease that it's not, we might have $40,000 that just kind of switches around there a little bit, Nice. Well, I can tell you it is nice because
I'm not like on an individual. I was seeing
there is a lot of money that is unappropriated. And when I used to get a little form from past person here in the town, it would show me all the costs and how it was each one of the departments at the end, and basically zero out balances. And so when they would overdraw, that revenue washed away their overdraw, and that used to fry me. Because they weren't supposed to be overdrawing to start. That money was supposed to be determined by you all where it's supposed to go, not there. So that's what I'm saying, there's a fair amount of chunk that can be looked
So
at.
note taken, let's try really hard not to fry Martha this year.
I can tell you, I'm not doing that.
Let's put the taxpayer down.
Proud.
So any questions about figures on this page?
I have,
Yes.
it's under the miscellaneous admin revenue. It went from 1,000 to 3,600. I was trying to understand. One thing that the 2,600 is coming from John D. Long, because it can be used for general assistance, the poor. And then the schools threw me off there. I just need clarification.
Tell us what that $3,600 is comprised.
So we obviously don't have a local school anymore, but we as a town pay taxes to the school. So it offsets it, that accepting that $1,300 helps reduce our appropriated and taxed portion of the school budget by that $1,300. And that's just the line that I put it in. But I broke it down so that you could see it. So the $2,600, the breakdown was, what is it, a third? No, it's 3/4. Why couldn't you have asked me this when I gave it to you the first time I wrote it? Yeah, that's
Printing, that's that.
refunds of something, whatever, that comes in.
General assistance and $1,500.
Right, that's how I came up with the 26. So yes, general assistance, the poor, so schools, roads, it's all broken up in the budget based off the amount of anticipated interest, and that was the breakdown. So two go into that line, one's for general assistance and one's for the schools.
I see you using interest. I commend you for
Other questions on this page?
Cable TV, because that came up in a different meeting that I was at, and I didn't think we had a cable TV channel.
That's a franchise agreement. We get 3% of all subscribers in town. It gets paid to us. I received. No,
That's a separate.
Okay.
but that's the amount that we get as a municipality from that franchise agreement that this board finally signed.
105-320 public safety fire and 105-325 public safety rescue. We have decided to add the $10,000 to rescue wages, and that would result hopefully or potentially in the increase by $15,000, which was that low end. So that will bring the figure from 2,000 to 225,000 to 240,000, correct now? Yes.
Yes.
Are you saying? I didn't follow you. Are you saying that's at 10? Is it 10 or 15 for
So we
transports?
right. So we added the $10,000 to be able to do transports, and that would have at least $15,000 to revenue from rest of it.
So change it to 235
240.
to what?
40.
Transports are what we do when we
Oh, sorry, transfer. trans, whatever. Yes,
I believe that fire applied for me, you get rescue. I don't know the answer to the question. Does it get included here in revenue or is it, are they their own separate more articles if there's matching funds? I know there's a lot of grant out there. MMA, we did one for the Municipal Center through MMA.
have we been awarded any of this money?
No, but if it's a matching grant, let's say it's a 50-50. I don't know if the grants are 50, we have to raise the other 50 and put it in this budget. Is that correct?
Those department heads are coming to us or coming to the board to ask for their permission to accept or to apply for a grant. That information would be disclosed and it would be their responsibility to add that share or that matching portion of it in their budget. So like the VFA grant, you're talking, I think you accepted it was for $2,600. That $2,600 is in Adam's budget. Because it's a 50-50 on that one. But there's warrant articles that will be on the warrant typically, as long as you approve them, that ask the town to allow them to apply for and accept grants and use those funds for the purpose of those grants. So we don't calculate the grant money coming in as revenue. And nobody's come to me with any grants outside of the grant you applied for that would be included in this budget.
If it's covered in a warrant article, then it's covered. It doesn't have to be in the budget. If they put it in the warrant article, they say this is approximately $26,000 that will be coming in. You're asking the townspeople to basically approve that money coming in as revenue used for that department. Okay.
So you don't typically do that with grants, because if you don't get the grant, now you basically have like the $10,000 grant for the roof. If we don't get it and we accepted that $10,000 as revenue, now we have a $10,000 shortfall in revenue because we didn't get that grant.
That's why I asked this in the past. And, it almost, thank you for your answer. Got it. In the past, we used to have to put it in the.
That's a dangerous game to play if you don't know if you're going to get it or not.
We're
Mhm.
not playing bigger schemes anymore. Yeah. Not implying that it can happen. We're not going to begin.
We can apply. We can say that. You go us.
One time -350 Parks and Recreation. Questions, changes? We have Park and Recreation, so we got to move on, get anything? Say no.
I don't know that. Right, but there's no revenue there on that line from fundraisers. We gave them money last year to fundraise. And I think they brought in $318, so but it says 00, so. I don't, the 10,000 for the current year we're in, I think we maybe make that, but right now we're only at 7.
Will you stop looking at the freaking report from 3 months ago? It's baseball season. I'm still taking in registrations. I'm just teasing you, by the way.
150.
Sure. And 115-380 Community Library. Just like to note, good job library increase from 8,540 in revenue to 16,600.
It's because we're, like Martha just said, we're utilizing the interest for, it's not just sitting in the bank account, we're appropriating it.
That's the question that I had, because it just says appropriation from library anonymous trust. I'm assuming that's interest. But then it says appropriation from accumulated donation reserve. That is not interest. That is using a reserve. Two different things, correct?
That is correct.
Correct.
And she is right, because I did put that appropriation in from the accumulated donation reserve. Last year, there was an appropriation from it, and I'm putting this in as a proposed use for you, which is why it's in the note. She probably knows what the balance is too, because she's got the report in front of her.
125-6 Public Works and 125-329 the Public Works Cemetery. Questions?
Okay. Sorry.
Just tuned in. Yes.
So my question here is, where is the revenue from the lots sold in the cemetery? My understanding is if we sell a lot, 30% of whatever that sales has to go into the perpetual fund, 70% goes to care for the library, and I only see
For
them,
the library?
I mean, sorry, these are library.
No, I just want to check why.
It says cemetery reserve trust fund interest is the only thing I see. I don't see any revenue from the sale of lots. Maybe we didn't sell a single cemetery lot. I don't know.
This is a proposed budget. This isn't what's currently been spent. And the policy that was written and approved by this board was 70 went into the trust. Was it 70 in the trust fund or 30 in the trust fund, 70 in the reserve fund? So the town's not accepting it as revenue because we're not using it to offset anything, because it's going into the reserve account. Which,
Okay.
so there's nothing to on the town's end to offset, because it has right.
130-390 waste management. Questions there?
Yeah, how am I missing my page? Oh, I hole punched the wrong side. Never mind. That's the 35% from somewhere.
Preemptive answers.
Well, she had asked the question earlier, so I was just showing where on the budget it's coming off.
What I have is the final page, 165-100 state revenues.
So on this one, look at the manager recommendation, not the committee, because again, the first budget I went to them was that 375. I've got the proposed figures right here from the state, and they changed with our insanely large valuation increase.
Questions on that?
And if you want, this is this year, this next year.
So after a review of revenue, the one thing that we discussed was in public safety rescue. We're looking at the motion, right? Or nothing. We will need to this one, so I'd like to make a motion that we increase the revenue line 105,325 from 225,000 to 240,000 to include the revenue from transfers.
I will second your motion.
Discussion?
Get sleepy.
Yeah.
All right, more discussion, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Celia, I.
Bye. Here.
Sandra, I. The motion passes. As that was conclusion of the whole business. When you have no new business, your other business, the board sets aside after 15 minutes at the end of every meeting for public comment. Because your public comment will go right for it. As there appears to be no further public comment, I do not believe we need an executive session. All right, I move to adjourn this meeting at 8:37. Thank you.
I second.
Discussion. Clerk Swindle.
So, aye.
Say aye.
Yes.
And the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very, very much. Thank you for your input, Cameron. Thank you for having so much information at your fingertips.
Mhm.
Maybe painful for you, but it makes this process
No, it's just,
really well done, sir.
it's
Well
St.
done.
Patty's Day at 8 o'clock.
Let's go get our Guinness.
Oh, and Tilton's is closed.
It's so. Thank you, Martin. Lights on. Thank you, good. Is this